But by the way, I don't want to get too off topic, but I know you growing up in Mays, did you do the chili and cinnamon rolls thing for lunch?
Yes, I was going to bring that up. I was about to say, hey, I'm going to stick with the chilies and the cinnamon roll. Yes.
Yes. No, we did as well. Delicious.
Yeah,
and somewhere there's a Cincinnati podcast that is talking about, those Kansans, they do chili and cinnamon rolls. Like, what's that all about?
Yeah. So in grade school and even in the middle school, it was you went on and you did you got the chili and you got the cinnamon roll on the side, and that was what you did. That was what you did.
It pairs well. It pairs well.
This is KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank.
Heed all who enter and beware this podcast. That's right. This is the paid podcast on the Kansas City Sports Network. I'm Nick Springer, and I've got Kevin Flaherty with me as always. And if you like what you're hearing on the show or watching, if you're on YouTube, be sure to hit the like button, subscribe. Be sure to leave a 5-star rating and review. It helps spread our platform as well. And be sure to follow our new Kansas Jayhawks KCSN exclusive Kansas Jayhawks coverage on YouTube. We're going to be posting exclusive videos on there throughout the course of this fall camp and into the regular season. So that's Kansas Jayhawks on KCSN. Be sure to go subscribe for that exclusive coverage. You don't have to deal with any more of the Kansas State or Missouri stuff. We have an exclusive Kansas channel on YouTube. Be sure to check that out as well. So, Kevin, thanks so much for hopping on here today. And we're going to be talking some more fall camp. By the way, we are officially only 3 weeks away, depending on when you're listening to this show, whether it's on Thursday night or maybe even Friday or Saturday. Just under 3 weeks, 3 weeks away from the start of the regular season for Kansas. We've talked about this before, but man, once you get to the start of fall camp, it just goes so quick. I mean, it feels like just 2 days ago, it was like 6 weeks, and now we're down to just 3 weeks before the start of the season. How excited are you? How pumped are you about this season and Kansas rolling in to take on Lindenwood to start coming up in 3 weeks?
Yeah, you kind of understand the urgency that head football coaches have, right? Because you definitely pick up on that in camp, and it's because camp goes by in the blink of an eye, from the second that you get out there, for preseason camp. The season's not far away. It's going to happen really quickly. And actually, Nick, when we do these things, we're going to look back at the Cincinnati game today. When we do that, we go back to the schedule or whatever, right, to open up the box score and go through notes and things like that. Kansas has a ticker on there, counting down to the Lindenwood game. And today, when I opened that up, saw the 21 days, and not to say that I wasn't excited before, but, 21 days, and then I was like, that's 3 weeks. It just 3 weeks, we will have Kansas football again, and I couldn't be more excited. It's one of those things that, I think this is the most anticipation that people have had for a Kansas football season in a really long time. Probably since, I would say, 2009, Nick, maybe. 2009, Kansas was not ranked in the coaches poll, which Kansas was ranked in the coaches poll that came out this week. But they were number 25 in the AP poll. A lot of people thought they had a chance to win the Big 12 North that year heading in, and so there was a lot of buzz that season. Kind of similar to this year. Kansas is going to be kind of on the fringes of those rankings. They're going to be somewhere probably between 21 and 25 when the AP poll does come out. Another season where you feel like, hey, things go right, you got a chance at a conference title.
Yeah, unfortunately, no Big 12 North for Kansas to win, but they do have a shot at still making the Big 12 championship, as you mentioned, with the favorable schedule that we've talked about in the preseason. As Kansas dodges a couple of top teams on their in the preseason on their schedule as well. So, but listen, it's the Big 12. You never know. And I mentioned this, I think, on our last show about the fact that you've got legitimately 6 or 7 different fan bases around the Big 12 that are sitting there saying, "Oh, we could go 9-3. Oh, we could go 10-2." And guess what? Some of them are going to be disappointed when we get to November because there's going to be a couple of those teams that are like 5-4 or something heading into November. So hopefully, the point being, hopefully that's not Kansas. But it should be very exciting. And to your point on the sense of urgency felt by coaching staffs around the country for Kansas, they've only had 8 practices, I think, at this point in time, heading into the rest of this fall camp. And you're right, you've gone through 8 practices and you only got 3 weeks left. Kansas is on a pretty tight schedule. They're doing a 4 days on, 1 day off schedule right now. So 4 consecutive practices, with that fourth one being a padded practice, day off, and then they go right back into it. So they're on a tight schedule. And listen, if you know Lance Leipold, which you and I do, Kevin, he is very, very strict on that. There's actually been a lot of positive talk, actually, from some of the different players and coaches about the schedule that Gabe's put together for this fall camp, about how they feel like it's benefited them a little bit. So I want to dive in more into that actually right now, because Kansas had a scrimmage on Wednesday night at Rock Chalk Park. We had a chance to go out and observe a little bit before they did their scrimmage. Of course, the scrimmage was closed, so you keep that stuff locked up tighter than those are state secrets. You're not going to get much out of that. But we got to see a little bit beforehand and talk to Lance Leipold afterwards, kind of about what happened in the scrimmage and everything. And again, Kansas continues to look for opportunities to play on grass. Rock Chalk Park is grass. That's where the Kansas women's soccer team plays. So another opportunity for Kansas to get on grass, as that's kind of become a priority for them because of the fact that you have Children's Mercy Park and Arrowhead Stadium. But Kevin, after hearing what Lance Leipold had to say post-scrimmage on Wednesday night, what were some of your takeaways about maybe what you're feeling, and maybe if you could somehow get into the mind of Lance Leipold, maybe about how he is feeling about Kansas right now, just over a week into camp?
Well, first of all, I mean, you look at it and everybody talks about Jalen, right? That's the big thing. That's the big deal. It's, hey, Kansas has a chance at a Big 12 title with Jalen. Kansas maybe doesn't have a great shot at a Big 12 title without Jalen. And so when you look at it from that perspective, he said, this is the most 11-on-11 work that Jalen's done in a really long time. And he kind of joked about the whole NBA load management, and trying to keep him fresh and all of those things. But at the same time, Nick, from what we've seen in the practices, and granted, we aren't watching the whole practice. We're seeing, basically to explain it to people, we're seeing stretches. A lot of times there's some sort of circuit or whatever to start off, ball control circuit, whatever, and then position drills. And so we aren't seeing the whole thing. But Jalen's looked full go. And he's been comfortable. He's had a lot of energy. He's been jumping around, all the things that you do not typically do if your back is bothering you. And then to hear again that, hey, this is the most 11-on-11 work that he's had in a long time. Obviously, the last time I feel like we talked about them scrimmaging was after the spring showcase, and Jalen was out there incredibly briefly. But just the fact that he was out there at that point was a positive. Now, him being out there longer, I think that's the main takeaway. But at the same time, like you said, Nick, there were a lot of different storylines to kind of come out of that scrimmage. One of the things Lance Leipold talked about was typically at this point in the year, the defense is a little bit ahead of where the offense was. He said that played out at the scrimmage. And there were some interesting guys that I thought that he singled out and said, hey, these guys kind of had strong scrimmages.
Yeah, and to go along with the Jalen thought, what was interesting to me about what Lance Leipold said was basically he talked a lot about just getting Jalen in a situation where he's got bodies around him, right? It's one thing to go out to a field and it's just you and your receiver and you're running routes and trying to build that chemistry. It's another thing when you've got offensive linemen all around you, when you've got 4 or 5 guys coming to literally try to kill you with the pass rush or whatever it may be. So that's a whole separate thing. That's a whole other level of adrenaline. It's a whole other level of getting used to that. And that's something that Jalen Daniels hasn't dealt with for, at this point, a year, basically almost a year, really. So I thought that was interesting that Lance Leipold kind of highlighted that aspect of getting him more comfortable. It's not so much maybe like the reps of throwing and all that stuff, but more of just like getting out there with, essentially with live bullets of guys coming at you and trying to pass rush you in 11-on-11. That's kind of what stood out to me there with some of what Lance Leipold said. And then, I think some of the interesting comments that he made about the offensive line continues to really pique my interest. This offensive line arc that we've sort of had over the course of the offseason, going back to the spring, was, okay, you got Jim Baumgartner, he's your center. Then, okay, maybe not. And then you get Bryce Foster, and okay, Bryce Foster's your center. And now we've had a lot of conversation from not only Lance Leipold, but Jeff Grimes about this idea of Bryce Foster playing some guard, Shane Baumgartner having a much stronger summer and start of fall camp. And now it really does seem like there could be some real shuffling of the offensive line potentially. I have to assume that Bryce Foster is going to be starting for KU against Lindenwood. That's just my assumption at this point. whether it's center, whether it's guard. I'm not really sure because there has been a lot of conversation back and forth about that. But at this point, I'm almost wondering if Kansas won't have a shuffling of the offensive line over the course of the season. Maybe the starting five we see in game one might not be the starting five we see halfway through the season. So I don't know. What's your take on that? Did you get that sense, or do you have a little bit better, a stronger sense of where things might sit with the offensive line at the moment?
Yeah, I think I think it's positive. There are going to be some people who are going to freak out a little bit about this and say, "Oh my gosh, you brought in Bryce Foster and he's not already the starter." This has been how Lance Leipold has conducted his practices since he's come to the University of Kansas. The guys who come in, they've got to earn it, and that includes transfers, that's freshmen, that's everybody. Just because you may be the best guy at your position, like they knew what they had with Mike Nowitzki. They had coached him before, everything else. He came into the program, he's starting off on the bottom of the depth chart and having to work his way up. It did not take Mike Nowitzki very long, obviously, to prove that he was the guy there. But I think more than anything, it's a positive that people are seeing Shane Bumgarner this way, right? And it was something that they saw in him when they decided to go after him in the portal was we think that, he's got the potential to be the guy at center for us this year. And so him being closer to that now than maybe he was in the spring, the coaches have said he's had a solid spring, but he didn't necessarily pull away for the starting job. Take from that what you will. I think that's just a positive. Now, if you're asking me right now and saying, who's going to start against Lindenwood? I think Bryce Foster's still got a pretty good chance to win that job. It's still so early in Foster's tenure here at Kansas. He still has to work his way up. And I think the fact that it's even a battle is a positive. Like you said, one of the things that Kansas has traditionally done is they've cross-trained linemen in different spots. And so if Shane Bumgarner wins that starting job and he's good there, you're not necessarily sitting there on the sideline saying, Bryce Foster is one of our 5 best linemen, and he's standing next to me. You give him a chance to get on the field regardless. But I look at it really as positive news regardless. Of course, one of the things that Lance Leipold had talked about when we had gotten him, not this time, but the time before, I believe, is that Michael Ford's been a little banged up as well. And so some of that could give you some coverage there. He's singled out Darrell Simmons as being a lot better as well. And so it's nice for them to have those options, whether or not Bryce Foster is your starting center. And I think the other thing to point out real quick, Nick, is Bryce Foster is a junior. So, whether or not he wins the starting job immediately at center, he's still got time at Kansas to make his mark. So it's not necessarily, hey, we brought in this guy, he didn't win the starting job, oh, what a bust, or whatever. He still has that chance to really lay a foundation. And quite frankly, when you look at how many guys Kansas is going to lose after this season, I think one of the positives that's out there potentially is Kansas could be pretty good on both lines with some of the guys that they could have coming back. And you look at Bryce Foster potentially being one of those starters coming back next year as well. It's not just hey, who's starting against Lindenwood is the most important thing in the world. It's, it's figuring this thing out, but also that Bryce Foster has a chance to create an even bigger impact as he gets more comfortable through the season and then on into 2025 as well.
Well, Bryce Foster may still have time to acclimate to Kansas, but time is running out for you if you want to get to homefieldapparel.com. You like that? That was pretty good.
Yeah, that was a nice transition. I appreciated that a lot.
That's right. Get over to homefieldapparel.com. They just announced 55 schools have exclusive football boxes. Kansas is one of them. And the design of these boxes is you are going to be covered for the entire fall season for football with the football box from Home Field Apparel. If you haven't checked it out, go check it out on their social media. They did a cool little really laying out what was in each box. For Kansas, there's a couple of really nice shirts. There's an Aloha Bowl shirt. You can get a sweatshirt as well. So you wear the T-shirt for the first couple games. Then you've got the long sleeves as it gets into the colder weather. You will be totally covered for the whole season with the Home Field Apparel football boxes with exclusive items, by the way, in those boxes. So head on over to homefieldapparel.com. And of course, if you haven't used Home Field Apparel yet, we've got you covered there as well with a 50% off discount code PAYHEAD24. PAYHEAD24 for 15% off your first order at homefieldapparel.com. Head over there. Like I said, time's running out, and we'll be right back on the Pay Podcast.
We appreciate you supporting KC Sports Network by listening to our podcast. You have helped us become the highest-ranked Chiefs podcast network in 2022 and 2023. And don't forget about our daily Substack newsletter, the best written analysis you can find on the Chiefs straight to your inbox every day. kcsn.substack.com.
This is the Paid Podcast on the Kansas City Sports Network. I'm Nick Springer, along with Kevin Flaherty. If you like what you're hearing or watching, if you're watching us on YouTube, be sure to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, leave us a 5-star rating and review. Be sure to definitely subscribe on YouTube, by the way, as well. Like Kansas Jayhawks, KCSN, it's exclusive AU coverage on the Kansas City Sports Network. Kansas Jayhawks, KCSN on YouTube for some exclusive videos we'll be posting over there throughout the fall camp and into the season as well. And also, if you want to join the conversation, if you're tired of Kevin, if you're tired of myself, you can join in and give us your opinions on the KCSN hotline powered by Mint Mobile. That's 913-407-6524, 913-407-6524. Send a text. Listen, folks, there's nothing easier than sending a text. All you got to do, whip out your phone. Maybe you're watching or listening on your phone. Just grab your phone, send a text with your thoughts, comments, questions, and more to the show, and you may hear that right here on the pod. So, as we said at the start of the show, Kansas is 3 weeks away, or under 3 weeks away if you're listening to this over the weekend, from the start of the 2024 season. And we are very close to wrapping up our offseason series, the Jayhawk Rewind, as we go through it. And we've been looking back at some of the past games for Kansas in 2023, going in order through the schedule. Had some great conversations about what those games could mean for Kansas going into 2024. As we approach the end of that, and then we get ready to really start to dive into some deeper previews of the 2024 season as well. We'll keep that going right here at the Jayhawk Rewind with the final game of the regular season for Kansas. That was against the Cincinnati Bearcats. Kansas was 7-4 at the end of the 2023 season, going to take on Cincinnati, who was 3-8. Cincinnati had a bit of a bumpy ride in their first year in the Big 12, and that's not unusual, right? You often see teams struggle in their first year in the Big 12. For Cincinnati, it was a bit of a struggle for them. In fact, they lost 9 of their last 10 games. They started the season 2-0, and then they lost 9 of the last 10. The only team they beat in conference play was Houston, and they were hosting Kansas to end the season. KU, of course, is coming off a 2-game losing streak, but the big story heading into the game for Kansas was one Jason Bean was going to be returning to the lineup for KU. And this was a game that Kevin got off to a bit of a slow start, to be honest. First off, shout out to Cincinnati. They gave us a drive that I love. The start of the game. That's right. 12 plays, 44 yards, 6:48 off the clock, and a field goal. That's right. Love those types of drives for Cincinnati to start the game, to go up 3-0. And the Kansas offense, despite having Jason Bean back, it wasn't exactly a great start for the Kansas offense. They were able to move the ball in the opening drive, but they had to punt. And then you blink and you're into the second quarter and Kansas down 3-0, and you're thinking, okay. But they were able to force some punts for Cincinnati. Cincinnati's offense, by the way, really couldn't do much after that made field goal in the first half, at least. And eventually, Kobe Bryant, it's an interception. Cincinnati was doing this weird thing where they were rotating quarterbacks. If you remember right, they had Emory Jones, the transfer from Arizona State, who was their starter. Then they randomly brought in Brady Lichtenberg for like a couple of plays in the first half, and he threw an interception. That didn't seem to go very well for them. Kobe Bryant picked him off, and that led to Kansas's first scoring drive in the second quarter with a couple of big plays from Jason Bean on a pass to Luke Grimm, and they get all the way down the field on a 40-yard pass to Luke Grimm. They get into the red zone. Devin Neal eventually would cap it off with a touchdown. It's 7-3 Kansas, and at this point you're thinking, okay, it seems like Kansas maybe has woken up a bit on the road. It was a night game in Cincinnati, but they started to wake up a little bit in the second quarter, it seemed like, and start to pull away really in the second quarter.
Yeah, how about that Devin Neal touchdown run, though? You know, we've talked about different runs that he had over the course of the year, and one of the things that we've tried to do as the series has gone on is try to, you know, basically point out where things, you know, could impact the 2024 season. And you know, Neal really on that touchdown run showed kind of the complete package, right? He had the speed to get to the outside, stiff-armed a defender, and then carried other defenders into the end zone. And that kind of got them woken up a little bit. And it was a really sleepy kind of game up to that point. And, you know, like you said, Cincinnati's decision to rotate quarterbacks, maybe not the best one. But then Kansas comes out. Next possession, Lichtenberg's back out there. It's 3 and out. And Kansas, you know, pretty much goes right down the field again and adds another touchdown.
Yeah, it's a big plays really on the next drive. You had a pass to Quentin Skinner from Jason Bean. Devin Neal busts out another long run on that drive. And then eventually Jason Bean finds Jared Casey for touchdown. Gives Kansas a 14-3 lead. You're feeling pretty good. Cincinnati does respond, though. They finally decide that maybe they should have just kept Emory Jones in the game, and they go back to him, and that seemed to get something going for them as they were able to get the ball down the field. It ends with a touchdown pass from Emory Jones to put Cincinnati within 4 points, 14-10. And Cincinnati did a great job on that drive, by the way, because it took them about 5 minutes, and they basically drained the rest of the clock in the first half.
Basically, the operative word there, yes.
Basically is the operative word, and I will explain why in just a moment. As they go down the field, they take 5 minutes. They score with about 26 seconds left in the half. And at this point for Kansas, you're thinking, man, you know, this has been kind of a weird first half. You're only going to be up 4 going into the break. Like, kind of feels like you should be up more. Jason Bean decided he felt the same way, that he thought that Kansas should have been up more. And sure enough, he takes matters into his own hands. They throw a long pass to Lawrence Arnold. And then Jason Bean finds Mason Fairchild at the end of the first half with about 7 seconds left in the half to put Kansas up 21-10. And, dude, anytime you can score like that to end a half, you've got to be feeling good. Kansas goes up 21-10. Now all of a sudden you're thinking, okay, we're in good shape here. Kansas has a double-digit lead going into halftime. Cincinnati, they responded once, but do you really get the sense they're going to be able to do much more? Probably not. And you go into half up 21-10.
Yeah, kind of a low-key thing that happened too. You know, Cincinnati didn't want Kansas to return the ball, and so they kind of sky-kicked it to Jared Casey, caught it at, I think, the 22, and had like a 22-yard return, setting them up with great field position. And at that point, I think you feel like, well, there's enough time to get a field goal. Instead, in 2 passes, you wind up getting the touchdown. Changed the entire complexion of the game. I mean, I'm not saying Kansas would have, you know, lost if that hadn't happened. They still would have gone into the locker room with a lead. But at the same time, you went from Cincinnati building momentum with that long drive with Emory Jones and everything to Kansas getting it back pretty much immediately. And just that had to be an unbelievable killer heading into the locker room for Cincinnati.
Yeah, and it set Kansas up for the classic double, where you score right at the end of the first half, and then you get the ball back to start the second half and go down and score again. That's exactly what they did with a solid 8-play, 75-yard drive. There was a big third down completion from Jason Bean to start the drive to Lawrence Arnold that kept it alive. They eventually get down the field, and then Devin Neal, he just does his thing, man. He just does his thing, and he goes and scores on a 30-yard run. And again, to your point about the momentum here, it goes from a 14-10 game to a 28-10 game with Cincinnati not even touching the ball, essentially, because Kansas scored to end the half and then scored straight out of the half as well. And with it being 28-10, at that point, I felt certainly that there was not really any chance Cincinnati was going to come back, and that proved to be true. Cincinnati, they did it again, man. They did it again. To start the second half, after Kansas scores, it's 28-10. Cincinnati goes down. and they have a 13-play, 50-yard, 6-minute drive that ends in a missed field goal. Wow.
That one's even worse because I know you love the drives that are really long but end in a field goal, but to end in a field goal attempt, not even a field goal, that was pretty rough. And to be fair, Kansas gave the ball back relatively quickly, and then Cincinnati goes on a really long drive again, and this time Cincinnati scores a touchdown. But my gosh, I mean, they were kings of like the 10-plus play drive in this game. That drained it into the fourth quarter, and it was with them scoring. You felt like you had a chance to cut it down a little bit. They went for 2 to try and cut the lead down to 10. Emory Jones winds up getting stopped, and then that was kind of the game, because after that, Kansas just kind of decided, hey, we've had enough of this thing being, at arm's length. Let's just go ahead and make it not a game.
Yeah, so it's 28-16, and then you get Jason Bean doing his thing, a long pass to Quinn Skinner, and then with his legs, Jason Bean strikes a 43-yard run to make it 35-16. And I think it was around this time in the broadcast that we also got the chili talk.
Yes, the Skyline chili.
Skyline
bring that up. So
that's right, yeah. The broadcasters of was this game even on ESPN or was it on ESPN Plus? I don't even
feel like it was on Plus.
Okay, well, the ESPN Plus broadcasters took it upon themselves to spend a good 15 minutes, a long time, talking about Skyline chili, and then they took it to another level in which they cut away from the game to watch the guy shoveling Skyline chili into his mouth during the game.
Can I just say, you have to do this in the fourth quarter, right? Like you can't.
You
can't have Skyline chili in the second or third quarter because of the risk to the broadcast booth. If you eat that stuff and you're in that room for too long,
yeah, you'll have to hit the bathroom. But on top of that,
they did.
The only reason they could bust it out is a close game. It was not a close game.
It wasn't even just that they did Skyline chili. It wasn't even just that they showed him eating Skyline chili. It was that they got like 3 or 4 varieties of Skyline chili, and they had him tasting them and like, oh, do you like this one? Do you like that?
Because there's like
one of the stranger things I've ever seen on a broadcast, for sure.
There's like the triple cheese. There's like the cheese with more cheese. There's like the cheesy cheese. There's like, I don't even really understand it at all. I've only been to Cincinnati one time, and I did not try any chili. That is what Cincinnati is supposedly known for, is Skyline chili or whatever. I never tried it.
I kind of enjoyed it, but I've got a bit of a cast iron stomach, so which was necessary.
Because isn't it like, so it's like cheese, chili, and there's like noodles, right?
Spaghetti, yeah. It's like chili over spaghetti, basically.
Yeah.
But it's like,
I'm gonna stick
with chili. Like if you called Skyline chili and you were in, Fort Worth or something like that, like you might get shot. Like it's a different kind of chili. Like it's almost a different food group of chili than what like some people consider to be chili. So, I know you, by the way, I don't want to get too off topic, but I know you growing up in Mays, did you do the chili and cinnamon rolls thing for lunch?
Yes, I was going to bring that up. I was about to say, hey, I'm going to stick with the chilies and the cinnamon roll. Yes.
No, we did as well. Delicious.
Yeah, that's
and somewhere there's a Cincinnati podcast that is talking about, those Kansans, they do chili and cinnamon rolls. Like, what's that all about?
Yeah. So in grade school and even in the middle school, it was, you went on and you did you got the chili and you got the cinnamon roll on the side, and that was what you did. That was what you did.
It pairs well, but don't take our word for it. Support your local chili and cinnamon roll people if you're in the state of Kansas.
True. Yeah, don't just get the Pillsbury cinnamon rolls because,
No.
I mean, listen, not to hate on the Pillsbury cinnamon rolls. Pillsbury cinnamon rolls, they are good, but if you're going to do the legit, like, chili cinnamon roll thing, you got to get the legit stuff, right?
Yeah. Oh.
So at this point, Kansas was up 35-16, Cincinnati 3-and-out again, and then Kansas really just kind of cruises through the rest of the game. Jason Bean does it again with another touchdown run, which was kind of a really cool moment for him because this was going to be his last game for Kansas, right? His last game, and he sort of has a big moment with a couple touchdown runs, which was cool to see. And then something that we wanted to talk about here as well, tying into the 2024 season, not necessarily a tie-in, but just kind of something that has been brought up a couple times in fall camp so far, and that's Ben Easters, right?
Yeah.
Because eventually Ben Easters would get into this game in the fourth quarter for Kansas late. He would actually help lead them on their last touchdown drive. And Ben Easters is a guy that has been basically quarterback 3/4 his entire career at Kansas, but there's some of the coaches, including Lance Leipold himself, have had some very positive things to say about his impact, despite the fact that he's not necessarily a guy that would be on the field.
Yeah, and I think, it was great to see Bean's regular season career end that way. Two carries for 93 yards and 2 touchdowns is not a bad, little run to have. But to your point, I think we all focus, and I don't want to say it's the wrong thing because you're obviously focusing on your team winning and players playing well and all those different things. But I think when a guy comes in and he's especially a quarterback or something like that, and he doesn't wind up playing a whole lot, it doesn't make a tangible on-field impact, there's a tendency to kind of downgrade that guy or talk badly about him. And one of the things that we heard from Lance Leipold, as well as quarterbacks coach Jim Zebrowski, is Ben Easters is a really important part of this program, and because of his work ethic, but also because of his consistency, right? He comes in every day with the right attitude, and they can depend on that. And when you're looking at a program like Kansas and you're trying to build something and you're coming from the place that Kansas was coming from when Lance Leipold came in, having a guy where you're like, I don't worry about that guy. Like, I know that he's going to be there every day. I know that he's going to be happy to be here every day. I know that he's going to work every day and that's going to be infectious. It was fascinating to hear them talk about the fact that Easters basically had leadership profile that was significantly above his spot on the depth chart. And when we talked to him, it was very apparent that they felt like they're getting tremendous value from Ben Easters, whether or not he's on the field on Saturdays, but obviously a pretty cool moment for him to get in. He actually kind of had to lead 2 touchdown drives basically because Dylan McDuffie ran in for a touchdown. I think were they hit with a hold? Is that what it was?
Yeah, I think there was they had
scored
once and then it got
Knocky Scott. Yeah, so there's a touchdown nullified, and then you wind up having a few more plays left, and
by the way,
one of the plays was Ben Easters on a 3-yard run. Zebrowski joked around because Easters lowered his shoulder on that run and said, maybe it's something about those Indiana kids. Of course, Cole Ballard, being kind of famous/infamous, in the games that he played that year for lowering his shoulder on guys from the quarterback position as well.
Yeah, and the other thing is, listen, Ben Easters did his job, man. And a 7-minute drive in the fourth quarter when you're in the lead by, a couple scores to kill the game. Pretty impressive stuff. The one thing I want to add on Ben Easters is I'm going to use a KU basketball term, I think, really here. You often hear KU basketball fans and even coaches sometimes talk about program guys. Right?
Yep.
And program guys are very rarely your superstar players. They are very rarely your leading scorers for multiple seasons. Sometimes they can be guys that are your 9th or 10th guy off the bench that come in and provide the energy or what have you, right? Ben Easters fits the profile of a Kansas football program guy, a guy that he's not going to probably impact winning big games, but it's clear that his impact is felt in other areas. Another name that kind of came to my mind as I was thinking about that analogy is someone like Hayden Hatcher, our other player who was at KU for a long time. or a guy like Sam Burns, right, who was at KU, through sort of the difficult times and was kind of there as well as they started to have success. Players that are not household names, players that are not guys that, maybe you initially first think of when you think, oh, remember, that whatever team, fill in the blank team, either for football or basketball, but players that unquestionably impact your program in a very positive way off the field. I think Ben Easters really fits that as a program guy. And again, he's a guy that you probably won't expect to see suit up at all in a game this year for Kansas, because he's going to be looking at being probably fourth behind on the QB depth chart behind Cole Ballard and Isaiah Marshall, of course, Sheila Daniels, but certainly somebody that, the fact that he was called out by name by both Jim Zabrowski and Lance Leipold on different occasions, really kind of unprompted too as well. It signifies that they hold him in very high regard in terms of what he brings to the quarterback room.
Yeah, and to your point, you can, when you talk to Ben Easters, and we got a chance to, you can see the lack of ego, right? Because everybody's talking about that backup quarterback battle, and they don't talk about it being a three-way battle, right? It's Cole Ballard and Isaiah Marshall, and so people are in there in the media room asking Ben Easters, what have you seen from the battle for that, for that backup quarterback spot? And it wasn't a situation where he's like, oh, like, I feel like I should be in that battle, or, or at least he didn't say that. Nick, the way that he spoke about Cole Ballard, the way that he spoke about Isaiah Marshall was so glowing, and, there wasn't any, you didn't detect envy, jealousy, whatever. It was very much like, hey, these guys give us a chance to be really good. And talking about it that way, having a guy like that in your program, like you said, a program guy, can really play up and provide an impact maybe beyond somebody that's seeing the field but not having a big impact.
Yeah. And so he would lead that drive for Kansas that would put a bow on the 2023 regular season for KU. Stamping a win for Kansas, getting to 8-4, defeating Cincinnati 49-16 was the final score. Kansas really kind of rolled through them, kind of as we outlined. Big games for Jason Bean with a couple of touchdown runs. Devin Neal had a big game as well with some big runs. And Bean finishes his career, the regular season at least for Kansas, on a very strong high note. Gets Kansas to 8 wins, and then KU starts to look ahead to where they might end up playing a bowl game. And I'm very excited to talk about that episode because obviously that's an opponent that KU's going to be seeing again coming up in less than a month with UNLV. So excited to dive into that one. But yeah, that pretty much ends it for the Jayhawk Rewind series for the regular season of 2023 as we look at 2024. Obviously some very interesting games from last year that I think there are some things that can be applied to the 2024 season upcoming as well. And certainly I know you're excited, Kevin, and I am excited for the starts of the 2024 season.
Yeah, college football can't get here fast enough. By the way, real quick, if you're watching this, Kansas put out that the new booth is in
That's true, yes.
football 25. And so I fired up the Dynasty to see if it translated over, and it does, in fact, translate over. So if you are playing college football 25, don't be surprised when you log on to play with KU, and the new and improved booth is in there, complete with the lights that you were talking about, kind of looking like wheat and all the different things. It's pretty cool to see. Honestly, Nick, if I were a coach and I were recruiting players, and they have obviously seen the video, probably they've shown them the drawings or different things like that, I would be telling them to fire up college football 25 to get a sense of what it's like, because it was pretty cool.
Yeah. And just FYI, some of those lights are physically up in real life already at the stadium in Lawrence. So
they're doing that really fast, but not as fast as in the game now, where, if you have played a Dynasty, you played a game at the old booth, maybe you had a road game, and all of a sudden the new booth is done mid-season. So kudos to video game Travis Goff. His build speed perks are maxed out, apparently.
Yeah, dude, imagine building a new stadium in like 2 weeks. That would be wild. You almost need you almost need like the Lego pieces, just stacking them together like that to build it so quickly. But yeah, certainly check it out. I mean, if you're a college football 25 connoisseur like myself or like Kevin is, we both play it quite a bit. And if you play with Kansas like we do, you'll have the new booths as well in the game also. So that's something to certainly look forward to as we get it's just another extra added layer of making it feel like you're this much closer to the start of the real deal in 2024. So that's about going to do it for this episode of Pay Heed here on the Kansas City Sports Network. We'll have more fall camp updates throughout the upcoming weeks heading into the start of the 2024 season as well. We'll be diving deeper into the entire schedule for Kansas as well coming up heading into the start of the season also. So you definitely want to stay tuned right here wherever you listen on podcasts, Apple, Spotify. You'll want to stay locked in here on the Pay Heed podcast on the Kansas City Sports Network. So be sure to leave a 5-star rating and review. And again, be sure to check out our KU exclusive YouTube channel at Kansas Jayhawks KCSN on YouTube. Subscribe there for some exclusive YouTube content as well throughout the season and fall camp as well. And one more quick reminder, you can also join us or hit us up on the KCSN hotline powered by Net Mobile at 913-407-6524. If you've got questions, comments, concerns, let us know how you're doing in your dynasty. I'd love to hear that. I'd love to hear how people are doing in their dynasties. Hit up the Mint Mobile hotline, 913-407-6524 to share your thoughts, comments, questions, concerns, and more. We'll be back next week with more on the Pay Heed podcast, more fall camp updates as well, and plenty more here. Until then, he's Kevin Flaherty. I'm Nick Springer. We'll talk to you again soon. See ya.